From Exoprimal to Remnant 2, July was a massive month for video games, so without further ado, let's dive into the gaming news of July 2023. Exoprimal is Capcom's latest attempt at online multiplayer, and it seems to have had relatively mixed results. We actually enjoyed it quite a lot and said so in our first impressions video, but there were concerns about its longevity, especially because of its $60 price tag.
Reviews from critics are mostly positive, averaging in the range of 60 to 80, but user reviews were actually on the higher end, with 80% positive reviews on Steam, which is pretty uncommon for a live service multiplayer game. However, there were complaints about the structure of its story, which for some reason makes you play multiplayer matches to unlock audio logs and cutscenes. People also took issue with having a paid battle pass on a full price game, but I suppose it is partially justified by being included on Game Pass, so that's the only place we'd really recommend giving it a try. Remnant 2 is a pretty unique roguelike third-person shooter, but still clearly takes inspiration from the Souls-like genre, randomly placing you in one of many interesting worlds and tasking you with taking out lots of different enemies, which although may sound generic, the cooperation between the classes in the multiplayer mode is what really made it fun, and we definitely recommend it if you've got a friend to play with.
It received a Metacritic average of 80, but did miss out on a very positive score on Steam by just 1%, mostly due to its disappointing optimization. This is something we also experienced and talked about in our first impressions video, but it wasn't a complete deal breaker and we'd still highly recommend it. Synapse is the latest exclusive title to launch on the PlayStation VR 2, and even if it was available on other platforms, it would lose a lot of what makes it great, as it really utilizes the strengths of the PSVR 2, using eye tracking and haptics to make you feel like a superhero, and I've got to admit, it does work. When you start off, you're only able to control objects, but even that is satisfying, especially with how the adaptive triggers allow you to crush explosives to take out enemies, and as you complete objectives, you'll earn currency that lets you upgrade your character. One of my favorites allowed me to pick up enemies and hurl them across the map, and even though due to its nature as a roguelike, it can get a little repetitive, the satisfying combat and ever-changing gameplay kept me engaged from start to finish.
Critics seem to generally agree, averaging 76 on Metacritic, with most reviews praising the striking visuals that help to distinguish the game. And with a user score of 7.4, it seems fair to say everyone can agree that Synapse is a pretty enjoyable addition to the PlayStation VR 2 catalogue. Pikmin 4 recently released to critical acclaim. Although we haven't tried it out yet, PC Mag seemed to sum up the reactions quite well with a huge list of pros, first mentioning the approachable strategy-focused gameplay, along with being packed with puzzling overworlds and creative dungeons, having new customization features, and the gorgeous visuals and presentation. And although they did criticise the limited multiplayer options, it's really not too big of a deal. So overall, Pikmin 4 seems like a great addition to the series and is definitely an enjoyable game for all ages.
The Expanse is the latest episodic adventure game from Telltale Games, set in the world of the Amazon Prime TV show of the same name, although since it is set before the events of the series, you don't have to watch the show before playing. But if you have, you'll probably recognize some of the characters. I personally haven't seen it, but I did jump into the first episode of the game and thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. It is absolutely full of the Telltale DNA that makes their games so special, with difficult choices and incredible presentation, so it's safe to say that I'm very excited for the remaining 4 episodes, which are releasing bi-weekly over the next couple of months.
There weren't too many reviews, but the gamer who did have access to the first 3 episodes unfortunately called it a series of television crammed into a couple of hours, but they did still give it 3.5 stars. Viewfinder is a mind-bending puzzle game which claims to challenge your perception and reshape the world around you, all from an instant camera.
I remember this game going incredibly viral a few months ago, and back then we weren't really sure about how it would translate to a full game, but based on both user and critic reviews, they seem to have done so successfully, with 92% positive reviews on Steam praising its unique mechanics, but still criticizing its limited content, especially when compared with its $25 price tag. Critics echoed the same sentiment, giving it a Metacritic average of 84, so on the whole, it does seem like a pretty novel and enjoyable puzzle game, but you might want to wait for a discount. Mortal Kombat 1 is launching with a pretty extensive roster of both fan favorites and unique new characters, but with the first set of post-launch DLC, they're adding a few characters you might just recognize, these being Peacemaker from, well, Peacemaker, Homelander from The Boys, and Omni-Man from Invincible, who is in fact voiced by J.K. Simmons himself.
Coincidentally, I've been watching The Boys recently, so I'm definitely most excited to play as Homelander, but I do also like how they've adapted Omni-Man from 2D to 3D. Earlier this month, a new story trailer for Spider-Man 2 gave us our first in-game look at Venom and the newly realised character of Harry Osborn, who was present in the original game, but in a very different form. I think this does a much better job at showing off the game compared to the original showcase, with improved graphics and a much more in-depth look at its narrative, so it's definitely made me even more excited for the October release.